Kevin, few questions. How old are you and where do you live again?
Yeah, sure. I'm 51 and I live in Vancouver, BC. Just
Okay.
on
And if I recall correctly, by going through some of the material and the links you gave me, you met your wife. She's Ukrainian. Was it in Eastern Europe that you guys met, or did you meet her here?
yeah, actually we met in Kiev, Ukraine, the capital, while I was living and studying there.
Okay. And how long ago did you meet her?
We met in around 2001. She was actually born and raised in Russia, but then she moved to Ukraine at 14, and then we met in Kiev in 2001.
And you guys were working together? You guys were in school together, or how did you cross paths?
Going to school together, she was literally a friend of a colleague,
Hmm.
so happened very quickly.
And how did you guys end up in British Columbia?
Yeah, no, it's a good story. So, very briefly, we married, actually married really soon in February of 2002, submitted the documents to local Canadian embassy, and then 6 months later, she got her immigration papers. So we arrived in Canada in 2002, September, and then we moved to BC 2 years later. So been in
Yeah.
Vancouver ever since.
And I'm going to keep going through the background story, but just to sort of fast forward to where we are today, Kevin's kids are now all the way across the country in Prince Edward Island. She left, took them, did a whole bunch of nefarious stuff, which we're going to go through, and he's kind of trying to figure out how to get them back. Was this a meal ticket for her to kind of get from Ukraine to Canada in
Uh,
hindsight?
it's hard. It's hard to say. In hindsight, there definitely were some clues. If I can think about like defining moments in terms of our marriage, and we were married for 16 years by the time we got separated. So the only red flags I can feel like is she got her passport and we started having children around the same time. And when she got her Canadian passport and the children, everything just kind of seemed to change. And so I often break up that 16 years of marriage into two 8 year blocks. The first 8 years were some sense of normalcy, and then the last 8 years were just like complete, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The last 8 years were a completely different person,
Were there
and
any
that would have been.
precursors to like the craziness that came after the first 8 years? Like, did you see anything before you got married or before you brought her to Canada or any of those things?
We met and got married within inside of 7 months, and so that, in hindsight, would have been a really big. I know I saw your eyebrows go up.
That's hey,
It's
listen,
that's a
that's one of the things I warn about in my book is make sure you really, sort of size her up for a good couple of years to see what she's made of, right?
right, hire slow, fire fast, right? That's one of your chapters. So,
Yeah.
so I didn't take the time to really to hire her slow. It was way too quick. We started living together almost immediately, like literally by day three, we were living together, and
Mm.
so I kind of felt at that time that I was committed to her. I needed to take care of her, and before you knew it, we were married.
How old was
So,
she when you met her?
married. She was about 20 years old when we married, when we met.
So she was 20, you were about what, 30? I'm trying to do the math,
Yeah,
36, 37?
eight. There was 8 years difference. So I was just about 29 years old, and
Oh,
then
29. Okay.
we got married when I was 30 and she was 22. So around that age range there. So yeah, I married her pretty young.
Okay.
That said, even at 22, she felt like, well, at least in her country, in Ukraine, she felt like she was an old maid. In other words, most of her friends had already been married and had kids, and she was feeling all kinds of pressure.
And you said you were married for 16 years. How long did you know her before you guys got married?
The 7 months.
Oh, so 7 months and then 16 years. Hang on, the numbers don't add up because you said that you met her in your late 20s. You're in your 50s now.
Yeah. So yeah, we met when I was 29, got married when I was 30. We were married for 16 years. That's when I was 46, and for the
Mhm.
past, we've been separated now for 4.5 years. So
Oh,
there's
so
where you
you've been
get the
fighting this
51.
for the last few years then.
Almost a half a decade, and literally fighting as in like just got the last judgment in on August 26th, less than 2 months ago. So this is real. This is happening. This is live.
Okay, got it. Um, why don't you take us through all the bullet points that you emailed me here to kind of, enlighten the audience. And guys, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat and I'll throw them up on the screen and let Kevin answer them as it's relevant.
Sure. Well, I when I was thinking about how to share this with your community, and first of all, I appreciate you, taking the time to hear and share my story with your community. I wanted to focus sort of on the 2 years prior to separation because you can see this pattern, if you will, and then the months leading up to separation, just like wild, crazy, and I feel like that will provide a lot of the backstory rather than hearing about how was the marriage for the first kind of 10 years. So um, it's okay. So in the 2 years prior to separation, at that point, things weren't well in the relationship. She was basically separating herself, and she was asking for divorce on a pretty regular basis. And so 2 years before we separated, I started going to, I kind of joke, I say, started going to marriage counseling by myself, which is just another way of saying that I was going every week and she only attended maybe 3 or 4 sessions. So she was really not interested in participating or engaging in any sort of dialogue. So, and
Well,
during this,
it's not very productive even when you go together. With her not going at all, it's a colossal waste of time. I would imagine you were just working on yourself then, right?
well, I did at that time absolutely focus on myself, but at the same time, I still thought I could save the marriage,
Mm.
right or wrongly. Also during this time, keep in mind, she'd finished her master's degree here at the University of British Columbia. By this time, she'd already enrolled in the PhD program in education at UBC. So she was heavy in all this sort of university campus stuff. And it's around that time that she started attending these university dance groups and parties. And she was always passionate about dance from her years growing up. But this time it was a little bit different. So she started going out on like weekend events, and then those weekend events started turning into like late evenings and then clubs downtown. And then by meeting all these people, she started having one-on-one interactions with other guys. And I know this part isn't in any of the materials that I sent you because it's pretty hard to put that in a court document, but she started meeting kind of like a series of guys and what we would commonly call white knights. So, for example, she met one guy named Ed, and this guy started sort of counseling her on the Canadian legal system. And then she met another guy named Colin Ford, like this total burnt out rocker for downtown. That was another white knight, also counseling her on the Canadian legal system. And then she started hanging out with another boy, going on like these day trips. She was going out for dinners. And then I even found out later that she started going out on dates with this guy with my kids. So I have 2 young kids at that time, and they were going to playgrounds. I even saw pictures later on of them at the pool together. So she is just, imagine, taking my kids out with some other guy on these quasi dates. And
So let me just stop for a sec.
yeah,
So
yeah.
why did you let her do all this? Like, why did you permit her to go out and party and dance all night?
I objected, but she basically told me that it isn't cheating as long as I know about it. And I said it was wrong. I know. She specifically told me it's not cheating if you know about it. And I said, this is wrong. There's no point in being married if she's going to go out and date other men.
You guys had the
And even,
kids at that point?
yeah, we had
Was
the
she doing
kids.
this
They were,
before the kids came along?
no, only after the children came along.
Hmm. Okay.
And by that time, her mother was living with us. So I had my mother-in-law living with
Oh,
us.
oh, here we go. The babushka showed up already, eh?
Yeah, babushka, totally. And straight to the point, like all she can speak is Russian. So, if you can imagine how
So they're having their
turbulent.
conversations in front of you. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I've
Well,
seen this movie before, but yeah. Okay. So carry on.
yeah, and just as an aside, I do understand Ukrainian and Russian. So anything they're talking about, I know what they're talking about.
Okay.
So even her mother was getting on her, but she just didn't seem to care. And even during this time, she offered what I retroactively call the ultimate simp solution. She offered to me, and no joke, she said if I would continue to provide for her financially, we
Mhm.
could all live together while she continued dating. Now, I knew this was just her long game of trying to figure out how can I sort of stretch the situation until I find myself a better situation and then, you know, screw off.
How old were the
Now,
kids at that point?
they were 17, like 6 and 3, growing up to 7 and 4. Like they're quite young still at this point.
Um, okay. And I mean, like if you got young kids, I mean, you're already in a jam and you're dealing with a chick that's already doing what she wants and you don't have any authority over the behavior that she's pulling.
Yeah.
You didn't see this before you got married. She only started pulling this after. I mean, you saw no signs of this before you got married?
The only sign before we got married is that she always told me that she wanted a husband that was just like her father.
And her father
And
was
well, he wasn't a retired army colonel, so I think in the Red Army. So I figured he was a pretty stand-up person. But when I start reflecting after the fact, what that really meant is that he had a man that was basically doing everything uh, sleeping separately from like his wife. What else was he doing? And he was basically doing everything, including research for her essays, typing her essays, doing homework for her, picking her up at her class. She was like the little princess. When we met, I guess the other red flags were she wouldn't clean. She refused to clean. She thought it was beneath her. She refused to work. She thought that those jobs were beneath her. And she didn't know how to cook, which may seem like a small thing, but it's one thing not to know how to cook. You can kind of accept that. But when you kind of refuse to cook and you expect someone else to do everything for you, then yeah, that should have been a red flag. And for whatever reason, I
Yeah,
was
that
just
would.
too starry-eyed.
Hey guys, I really hope that you enjoyed that short clip. If you did, consider supporting the creation of content by checking out my supplement line. Pinned in the top comment below of this video in the comments, there's a link to the unpluggedalpha.com/shop. When you click through, you'll be able to land over here, and the entire lineup is broken down by category that it performs best in: estrogen metabolism, fat burning, your foundational essentials for health, immune health, performance, and testosterone support. If you check out with coupon code ALPHA10, you'll get 10% off on your first order. There's also the option to use the subscribe and save model, where regular shipments will be sent over to you on a regular basis, and that gives you a little bit of a discount, and your supplement facts are always broken down over here. Thanks for watching. I hope you guys have an awesome day. And again, check out that link. It's pinned in the top comment below in this video. Peace out.